vindication of the moral, intellectual, and religious capabilities of the colored portion of mankind. All right, this was published in 1848. I'm going over to page, all right, I'm going to start here where it says the Jews. The Jews, however, slightly their features may have assimilated to those of other nations amongst whom they are scattered, from the causes already stated, certainly form a very striking example as regards the uncertainty of perpetuity in color, descended from one stock and prohibited by the most sacred institutions, talking about God's laws, from intermarrying with the people of other nations, and yet dispersed according to the divine prediction. That's Deuteronomy 28, verse 64, the divine prediction about them being scattered into every country on the globe. This one people is marked with the colors of all: fair in Britain and Germany, brown in France and in Turkey, swarthy, that means black, in Portugal and in Spain, olive, that means brown or black. Olives come in three colors: green, brown, or black. Olive in Syria and in Chaldea. Tawny, that also means black. Tawny or copper colored in Arabia and in Egypt, whilst they are black at Congo in Africa. Wow. Talking about the Jews. Let's move over. All right, let's read this. A remarkable fact in the history of Loango and the Empire of Congo is that the country, according to a statement which was fully credited by Oldendorp, himself a writer of most correct judgment and of unimpeachable veracity, contains many Jews settled in it. Who retain their religious rights and the distinct habits which keep them isolated from other nations. Though thus separate from the African population, they are black, talking about the Jews, and resemble the other Negroes in every respect as to physical character. It is probably in allusion to this case that Pennington in his textbook says, the descendants of a colony of Jews originally from Judea settled on the coast of Africa are black. See that? Talking about the Jews, a colony of Jews originally from Judea settled on the coast of Africa are black. This was written in 1848. Wow. A Social and Religious History of the Jews by Salo Whitmire Barron. All right, this was printed in 1973. The Jewish Publication Society of America. Well, alrighty then. Let's go inside this book. I'm going over to page 265. All right, read along with me. During the last quarter of the 16th century, there were several other accusations against individuals who allegedly performed such suspicious acts as removing the sinews from certain parts of animals before eating them, cooking their food with oil rather than lard, and betraying other symptoms of Jewish infidelity, meaning Jewish unbelief. Less routine was the case of a centenarian, that means 100-year-old Negro, Pedro Alvarez. So there was this black man named Pedro Alvarez who was reported to have insisted that God had commanded all men to be circumcised. This Negro, Pedro Alvarez, was a Jew. Okay? He was a Jew. And this was in Spain. That's Iberia. All right? Let's go on, because as you read further down, it goes into the Spanish Inquisition against the Jews. It's funny how they threw in this 100-year-old Negro. And it says there was no trial because Alvarez died in prison. This was regarding the Spanish Inquisition. All right. Let's move on. I'm going to page 354. A new impetus to seek shelter in the unexplored dark continent, the dark continent is Africa, was given to Jewish refugees from the Iberian persecutions, from the Spanish persecutions after 1391, in the area around Tendirma, some 60 miles southwest of Timbuktu. That's in Africa. Founded in 1496, Jews had allegedly lived for generations under 7 kings, each of whom had an army of 12,000 knights. Wow. Y'all see that? So you had Jews living in Africa, found in this area, founded in 1496. Remember, the persecution started here in 1391. They founded this place, Tendirma, in 1496, and they lived for generations under 7 kings, each of whom had an army of 12,000 knights. So the black Jews were the knights.
In this book, The Image of the Black in Western Art, it reveals that the black man was the knights of Europe. I know it's hard for some of you to believe, especially you black women. It's hard for you to even imagine your black man in greatness. It's hard for you to even teach your young black sons that his ancestors ruled in greatness, in royalty. We were the knights of the round table. That's right, we were King Arthur and people like that. That was our ancestors. Just take a look. I lie not. I'm not lying. I'm showing you proof. This is the evidence that they want to keep out of the school system. This is the evidence, the movie that Hollywood refuses to put on the screen. They might put a glimpse of a black man in the background with armor, but a main leading role? No, don't let the descendants of slaves realize that they ruled over us at one time, and we will do so again. Thus saith the Lord. Take a look, brothers. Take a look, sisters. We were the knights. We wore the armor. We wore the capes. That's right. That was us. That was us. And then the white man came up in power at the Vatican and began to rule. Okay? But look, just take a look. This is evidence. This is CRT, critical race theory. They said, take it out of the school in case they find out. Take it out. Take it out. Make sure they never wake up. But we the Israelites, we're here for you, brothers and sisters. We're here for you, your sons and your daughters, to reveal the truth like it has never been revealed. Take a look.
Let's not just stop there though. Let's go down. It has been suggested by no less an authority from Friedrich Ratzel that the island of Sao Tome, that's St. Thomas, that's on the west coast of Africa, discovered by the Portuguese in 1471 and subsequently used as a place of deportation for Jews unwilling to adopt baptism. You had many of the black Jews who refused to be baptized in a Roman Catholic Church under Christianity, which was nothing but white supremacy. We recall the forcible removal of Portuguese Jewish children to that locality in 1497. So these Portuguese Jewish children were removed to the island of St. Thomas, okay? May have been instrumental in the settlement of many Jews in the neighboring West African lands. Do y'all see this? Do y'all see this? Do you understand? Let's read it again. It has been suggested by no less an authority from Friedrich Ratzel that the island of Sao Tome, St. Thomas, that's on the west coast of Africa, discovered by the Portuguese in 1471 and subsequently used as a place of deportation for Jews unwilling to adopt baptism, we recall the forcible removal of Portuguese Jewish children to that locality in 1497 may have been instrumental in the settlement of many Jews in the neighboring West African lands. Wow. Wow. All right. Look at this. These tenuous lines of investigation have been pursued mainly by anthropologists who have looked for patterns of thought and behavior reminiscent of those known among Jews and found among various African tribes and their descendants transplanted. Let me zoom in. Let me just zoom in right there a little better. Known among Jews and found among various African tribes and their descendants transplanted to the New World. The New World is the United States of America and the Caribbean islands. Okay, that's the New World. So you had Jews from among various African tribes transplanted to the New World. Okay, representative of that school of thought is Joseph J. Williams, whose work on Hebrewisms in West Africa still is a major source of information, both substantive and speculative, beginning with the study of Ashanti descendants living in Jamaica. Williams writes, this is what he writes, in the first place, many Hebrewisms were discovered in the Ashanti tribal customs. Then several Ashanti words were found to have a striking resemblance to those of equivalent Hebrew meaning. Finally, the supreme being of the Ashanti gave strong indication of being the Yahweh of the Old Testament. I was taught the pronunciation is Yahweh, but we know it's talking about the same God of the Old Testament in the Bible, of the entire Bible, as a matter of fact. Look at this. Of course, since these descendants of Ashanti tribesmen lived alongside of, sometimes of the very households of, Jamaican Jews, the origin of such contacts in the Ashanti's original African habitat can no longer be ascertained, meaning they lost that history. General History of Africa, editor B.A. Ogolt. I'm on page 67. I'm going down right here to this paragraph. Africans also settled along parts of the Malabar coast during the 17th and 18th centuries. These were black Jews. Let's read that again. Africans also settled along parts of the Malabar coast during the 17th and 18th centuries. These were black Jews, descendants of African slaves who had left Cochin and Kerala in southern India to come and settle on that coast. Most became domestics and intermarried with local inhabitants and other Jews. What I want you to see is that the Africans who settled along Malabar were black Jews, descendants of African slaves.